What's going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving you a non-spoiler review for Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus. So this was definitely one of my most anticipated movies of this year, and once the trailer started to come out, it shot up my list in terms of being even more of one of my most anticipated movies of this year, which is interesting because sometimes trailers will release and it'll actually drop my excitement a little bit depending on if the trailer's not that good. But I think all the Alien Romulus trailers are like some of the best made trailers I've ever seen. So my excitement just kept getting higher and higher and higher. And I just went to go see it in IMAX. Here are my thoughts. We're gonna go through the positives, then the negatives, and then we'll give it a rating out of 10. Again, with no spoilers. Starting off with the positives, this is by far one of the best looking movies of the year. I would say, in my personal opinion, it is the best looking movie of the year. I would go as far as to say it's one of the best looking movies of the decade. Might be controversial to say, but I genuinely think that. I did see it in IMAX. I'm not sure if it'll look as good in other theaters and other screens. I have no idea, but where I saw it, it was outstanding. And obviously, the Alien franchise has a huge advantage of being able to just showcase some really beautiful visuals in space. Space is always very beautiful. It's really, it's always a thing that they can just do a lot of creative things with, and it just looks phenomenal. I don't know how they made it look the way they did, but every single shot in space just looks amazing, and I was blown away by it. So any shot that's just focused on that, it's like amazing. The way it's shot too, it's not just like the actual effects themselves, but it's also how it's shown to you. All of it looks amazing. And even just the shots inside of the space stations themselves, everything just looks so high quality. Like, you can tell they put a lot of work into this. They did not skip any corners whatsoever, and the cinematography was off the charts here. Something that was also a standout in this movie was the sound design, and I was fully expecting this because even the sound design in the trailers were amazing, but it is just outstanding in the movie itself. Probably one of the best aspects of this movie, whether it's the actual soundtrack itself by Benjamin Wallfish. Oh my god, like, such amazing, just tension building music, which I feel like most of the Alien movies do a pretty solid job at. And it doesn't matter the scene, like whether it's a slower paced scene or something that's more action packed, the music is always there filling you with anxiety, and that's exactly what they were able to accomplish with the sound design. Not only in the soundtrack, but also in the sounds that the xenomorphs make, the sounds that the space station makes, just the sound that literally everything in this movie makes. All of it is phenomenal. The practical effects are amazing all around as well. Fede Alvarez made a pretty huge point that he really wanted this movie to be full of practical effects, which, based on some of the criticisms I heard about Alien Covenant, it probably was in relation to that, because I heard a lot of people criticize that movie for using a lot of CGI with the xenomorphs, which I personally didn't mind. I loved Alien Covenant, but I'm assuming he was trying to listen to that feedback that people gave to that movie and said, okay, let's just go full in with the practical effects. And all of it looks phenomenal. Every single shot of a xenomorph in this movie looks real, and the face huggers look real because they are real. They actually used real props in order to establish that. And not even just with those two things either. All the space station itself, just how it looks, it's all practical. They did so much work with the set designs here. Everything, there's a lot to it. There's like at least 20 plus different rooms that they show us within the space station that you can tell they made a whole separate set for that specifically. That obviously would take a lot of work. Whether it's the gore and the blood, like, all of that just feels so real because they did a lot of work with practical effects, which is just exactly what you should do for a movie like this. The movie also has some solid characters. So one of my favorites was, of course, Rain, played by Kaylee Spaney. She's been fantastic over the past few years. She was in Priscilla, and she was also in Civil War, and she's been really good. She's really good in this as well. And actually, my favorite performance in this movie is actually not even for a human character. It's actually for one of the androids, his name was Andy, and he was played by David Johnson, and his performance was phenomenal. And obviously, when you're playing an android, it's obviously very different than a human. He has to do, sort of different mannerisms and stuff, and it was amazing. And there's a lot to that character, and I can't really get into it without spoiling stuff, but it's just so good what he's able to do with that. And obviously, with having an AI character, or I guess, they call them synthetics in the movie, you can call them androids, robots, whatever you want to call them, but there's so many interesting conversations about what that actually means to society, like what this person what's the person's place in society. Every Alien movie touches on that at least a little bit, or at least most of them do, and this one definitely doesn't shy away from it either. And I would say there are actually some really interesting conversations surrounding it, and some of it is actually quite different for the Alien franchise. There's also some new elements brought to the Alien franchise that we've never really seen before, at least not in this way, and I actually really quite enjoyed those inclusions. Some of them are not going to work for people. There are some things in this movie that people are going to see, especially if you're a longtime fan of the Alien franchise, and you're going to be like, I don't know how I feel about that. That's just too different for me. But for me personally, I thought it was a really unique direction, and especially towards the end of the movie, there's some crazy shit that happens that, I mean, it worked for me. Like I said, it really depends who you are, but for me personally, it worked. There's just so many scenes in this movie where I feel like they utilize the environment in such a great way. There's scenes with, gravity changes that are really interesting. There's scenes involving like rooms that almost look like an obstacle course, and characters have to kind of get through it. And they do a fantastic job with that because it's always really intense. You don't know what characters are going to make it out alive or dead. I left this movie thinking to myself, this would be such an amazing haunted house experience, like taking the space station and just kind of turning into a haunted house in real life, because I would definitely go through that. That would be really sick. In a lot of ways, they describe this movie as a mix between the original Alien and Aliens, and I honestly don't see it exactly that way, but I do think it does feel a lot like that, at least for certain parts of the movie. But I think they take elements from a lot of the Alien movies, actually. I think there's some elements of even Alien Resurrection in here. There's some elements of Prometheus, and I'm not going to go into the specifics, but they don't shy away from taking elements from pretty much any Alien movie. Now, are there any new elements? Yes, as I said before, there are some new elements, just not nearly as much as some of these other movies. I don't think it feels as unique as something like Prometheus or Covenant did, but I do think it still has quite a good place in the Alien franchise. It's definitely going to be a lot more familiar to Alien fans, and that's why I do think this is going to be a well-loved Alien movie. I'm seeing a lot of mixed reviews currently, but I think it's leaning more towards people enjoying it quite a bit because it is a very familiar Alien movie. It takes risks, don't get me wrong, but it also plays it safe in other places where it's just trying to be a really intense horror sci-fi slasher, which is essentially what it is. But of course, there are some negatives. My first negative is that there are some fan service-esque moments that don't work for me. There's other ones that do work. I do think they tried a little too hard with the fan service elements. They're not like a bunch. I saw some reviews saying it's like filled with fan service. People were calling this a fan film. That's what it feels like, which is just insane to me. That no, it's not a fan film. But are there some elements from the other movies that they put into this that feel like fan service? Yes. And most of them are fine, but there's like one particular, another one that like, I was just like, you could have done without that. It kind of felt kind of forced, which I don't mind fan service whatsoever, as long as it doesn't feel forced. If it feels organic, if it has a place in the movie, then it's fine. But if it comes across as, okay, that they only put that in the movie because they wanted to get a kick out of the audience, then I'm gonna probably have a bit of an issue with it. But for the most part, it's not really a problem. There's just a couple moments I was like, okay, you're trying to call back to that movie, I get it, but like, why do we have to do that? It's not necessary. And in the context of that scene, it really didn't make a lot of sense. There's also one other fan service type element that is in the movie that's gonna piss off a lot of people, and it didn't really piss me off necessarily, but I did feel like, okay, again, we could have done without this. You could have done this differently. I don't think it would have made the movie worse. I don't think a single person would have felt like the movie was worse if you just decided not to do that fan service. And actually, I think a lot of other people would have liked it more because it probably will turn off a lot of fans from the movie. Like I said, didn't really turn me off, but I do think it is something that a lot of people will get pissed by. Another negative is, again, this is kind of like a minor thing in some cases because I still think it was really solid, but I think some of the kills felt a little too familiar within the Alien franchise, which maybe that's just kind of how it is, we're this far in the Alien franchise, what other types of kills can you really do? But I felt like none of the kills were like that new for the Alien franchise. They all felt like, okay, we've kind of seen characters die like that before, and yeah, they look good, don't get me wrong, the kills are great, but again, they kind of felt like, okay, I wanted to see some like really new stuff here with the kills. But like I said, I felt like most of it was familiar. There's one that's very different, but like most of them just kind of felt too familiar for me. So they didn't like shock me as much as I kind of was hoping they would, but they were still great the way they were done regardless. And honestly, that's my only negatives. I just straight up loved this movie. I think it is my favorite movie of the year currently. I don't know if there's going to be new things that pop up in my head later on that maybe make it a bit lower on my list for me. It definitely could change for sure. I have no idea, but all as I know is I had a fantastic time watching this movie, and I think it was fantastically made. One of the best put together movies I've ever seen. I just think it got a little too ahead of itself with some of the fan service. That's about it. But other than that, it's fantastic. It's amazing. For a rating, I would give it a 9.7 out of 10, which, yes, that is the highest I've given a movie so far this year, and probably even compared to last year, it's up there. I was a huge fan of this movie. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed it, let me know. If you're gonna go see it, let me know that as well. I would love to hear your thoughts. Peace out, everyone.